Hi, my name is Jim Gibson from CableSupply.com, NOAA Voice and Data, and Blackstone Cybersecurity. When I was going for a certification, the CISSP, I was going online. I was trying to look at people who were already taken the test and what type of difficulties they were having, with how they studied, things like that. And I did not find a lot on there. Now, some of the other certifications that I went after, I could go online and I could, hear the difficulties, the problems, everything else. But I did not see anything on the CISSP, anything that I got a lot out of anyway. Maybe if by now there'll be other people talking about the CISSP certification, which stands for Certified Information System Security Professional. And it's a great certification. But I want to step back a little bit. I want to tell you how I walked into that certification. Just to let you know, I have 39 years experience. Yeah, I think it's 39 years as of 2 weeks ago. 39 years experience in IT, worked for the government, dealt with classified information, crypto, all that other stuff in the government for many, many years. After that, I worked for some big corporations in the IT department, a couple of them. And then lastly, I started NOAA Voice and Data Systems. Been in business now for about 28 years, 29 years, I don't know, who cares. So I do have a background in this. I've been dealing with cybersecurity most of my life. It's kind of curious, years ago when I first started, it was really not called cybersecurity, it was called communication security. It wasn't even called IT when I first started. But a lot of the principles that I learned back then are still principles used today. Defense in depth, I learned that. Learned about how people break into systems, things like that. It hasn't changed in that area. In some areas, simple, basic security really is outlives operating systems and things like that. But anyway, let me start from something that happened that was very curious, and I'm glad it did happen that way. I saved myself a lot of money and time. I was kind of getting literature and everything else from a local college, university, state university, and it invited people to apply for a master's in cybersecurity. And I already have a master with double major, and I probably have about 150 other hours of master's studies, so I didn't really think I need another master's. But I thought, that might be cool to go there. I got some extra time, things like that. I could probably do that and enjoy it. Hear other people's, experts' opinions on different areas of cybersecurity. So I thought, this is a good deal, man. I'll give it a try. So I put in my application and told them I was interested, and I got an invitation along with the other students who were interested, to our potential students, future students who were interested in this, who wanted to, you can meet the dean and you can ask the dean any questions. And of course, I sat in the big conference room. There was probably 10 of us total in that conference room. And so everyone had little questions, everything else. And I was the oldest, kind of was obvious. And also the person who'd been in IT longer than anyone else, and the only one that's a business owner. So I had some questions as a business owner, as a person that does investing. And what I said was, when I look at your curriculum, it appears to me to cover the domains of the CISSP certification. And I said, I was just interested, what type of advantage is there in going to your university here in North County, San Diego, compared to actually doing self-study? And it was an honest question. It wasn't a trick question. But the dean, the acting dean, I think she was an acting dean, went ballistic. Man, started yelling and everything else. And in fact, she was so upset she didn't look at me. She looked up into the ceiling and started talking to me like this and said, if you want certification, you go get certification. And so I listened to the rant for a while. And finally I just said, ma'am, I have some legitimate questions here. And the reason I'm asking these questions is I'm a businessman. I want to know if I invest time and money, which is going to be 2 years of my life studying for this master's program. At the same time, I'm probably going to spend $40,000 to $60,000 on this program. I would like to know what my return on investment is. What are you going to give me in response to my efforts and my time and my money and everything else? And she was just quite ticked. She really didn't answer the question. And I thought that was kind of rude to me because she's an academia and she doesn't really care about return on investment or making money or things like that. So I know I probably offended about 10% of my audience, but I'm just telling you the true story of what happened. So I finished with the application, put in everything they requested, answered all their questions, everything else, and then I got rejected. And I thought, wow, that's really strange. So I called them up. I said, what do you mean rejected? I've been accepted at other colleges, and I've gone through other programs, and I have already a master's degree. And in fact, I was already accepted at another UC school in another county just a few years back for something similar. And the person said, well, they said you don't have enough experience in IT. I thought, how could you possibly have more experience in IT than 38 years in IT, in every area? I don't know. I know there's a lot I got to learn. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm the center of the universe when it comes to knowledge in IT. It's just not true. And I didn't come across that way. I just wanted to know from them what advantage it was to go to their school, and they couldn't answer that. So they recommended that I go back and get a bachelor's degree in information in computer science, which I thought was kind of a waste of time to do that. Since I already do this. At any rate, I'm kind of thankful now that I was not accepted for that master's program. This is still kind of bizarre. I think I spent more years in IT than Dean was alive. So that was kind of bizarre. Real IT, functional, where you got to make money at it, type of things. Worked with some big corporations anyway, and the government. I still work for the government in some areas. So anyway, make a long story short, I decided, let's stop screwing around and let's get the certification out of the way, the CISSP. I knew even if I got my master's, I was going to have to go on to this certification because really, this certification is the best certification out there in cybersecurity. I know I probably lost another 5 or 10% of the audience on that, but listen to me, it really is. It's a great certification. When you already have a master's degree in business administration, this kind of supports that. This is it's not a how do you program a router or switch. I already studied all that. How to apply security to routers and switches and everything else. I studied all that with Cisco and everything else. So I decided the CISSP is really the standard, the foundation, the thing you really want to go for. And if you're thinking of going for the CISSP, I'm going to tell you how I passed the test. So I already have a background, and you got to have 5 years experience in cybersecurity, documented experience to be able to get the certification. Of course, you have to pass the test. The test is 6 hours long, and no, I'm not going to tell you what the questions are on the test, but I can tell you this, that it's been almost a year now since I took the exam, and I really don't remember any of the questions anyway. But it was an interesting 6 hours. Not only that, you can't have any felonies in your background, and you also have to be endorsed by another CISSP. So there's a lot of requirements on that. Now, if you do not have the experience, that's fine. You can become an associate. And I welcome you to look up all the details on the ISC2.org website, and it will tell you exactly what you need. And there are also some good people there that will talk you through it. So if you're interested in that cert, it's a great cert to have. Anyway, how did I pass the exam first time? Well, let me tell you. I decided I would pick the book. The book, it's heavy. Man, You could kill someone with this book. And this is a great book. All the books I'm going to show you today are fantastic books. I have no negative comments about any of them. And this is Sean Harris. She is the, in my opinion, duty expert on cybersecurity at this level, in this particular area. And I'm sorry to say she's passed away about a year or two ago. I just enjoyed reading everything she said, and just like a dry sponge soaking up the information. She's really great. However, this book is difficult to study. I mean, it's, whoa, it's small. You know, another thing too is before I buy a book, I go into Amazon.com, I type in the book, and the first thing I do is I look at the comments from the other individuals who have read the books, and they're really good, so they'll tell you whether it's a good book or not. So the next book I got, not quite as heavy because it's not a hardback than this one, but about the same size and width, maybe even more, I don't know. But I studied this book from cover to cover a couple times, and I don't know if you can see it on the TV, but a lot of them, you know, I got it footnoted and colored and everything else. It's a great book, and I'll let you see it. You can look it up on Amazon. It's a great book. I enjoyed this book. I actually enjoyed everything in IT, but especially cybersecurity. That's my favorite subject in IT. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. This book is invaluable, this one. And I listened to what the comment was from the authors on this, and they said they would only give me the essential information to pass the test. Well, I already had these two books, studying them, rereading them over and over and over again. Probably read this one probably about 3 times, 4 times through, studied it and everything else. I'm going to show you how I study anyway. So this book is really good. I enjoyed this, read this numerous times, probably more than the others. And as you can see, they're all highlighted. And I always like writing comments. If you can see the comments, I write comments on the side. So it helps me to find it on the page. I wish I'd put that on pages. This, you know, the topics or whatever. But that's me, and I enjoy doing this. And you know, I put in 1, 2, 3, 4 if there was 4 points underneath that title, and did that. And this is really an excellent book. And again, I just about lived this book over and over and over again. Great authors, easy to read, easy to understand, things like that. And then, of course, practice exams and practice exams over and over and over again. And there's probably 1 or 2 other books that I read on the subject, and I gathered all the information I could, talked to some friends that were CISSPs already. What was it like? What was the thing? Now, one of the things I did is let's look at this book in particular. So I went through all the domains, you know, common body of knowledge. That's what I was saying about the college. I already knew the common body of knowledge. I already knew about CISSP. So what I did is when I talked to the people at the college, I said, you know, your curriculum is set up exactly like the CISSP, which is great. I'm not opposed to that. I'll go to the school, do the study, everything else. When I get the degree, I'm going to go for CISSP. One way or the other, I'm going to go for the certification. So I decided this book is probably the best for me. But I wrote in there some of the things, like I knew the value of each domain in the book. And if you're not familiar with domains, the common body of knowledge means there's certain areas you have to know to be in this field. And so what they do is they turn around and they set them up in such a way so you can study them, and this is what they're going to test you on. So I always go and look at the test. Well, you can't actually see the test, but descriptions of the test. That's where these things come in, the practice. And there's some other things too. There was I got it downloaded in my smartphone that had questions. And so one of the things I would do is I was sitting in the dentist's office waiting for some sort of dental work, and I had to wait for 10 minutes or something. You know, it's reasonable to wait for this stuff. Anyway, what I'd do is I'd go through those questions, see which ones I got right, see which ones I got wrong, go through them over and over and over again. Now, when you study for an exam and you're going through the same test over and over and over again, sometimes the test becomes useless. So that's why I got the practice tests, and I went through them and did them. This book to me probably summarized everything else that I was studying, so that was really good. And I made sure that when I went through one chapter on this book, what I did was I wouldn't go on to the second chapter until I thoroughly understood that chapter, until I took the chapter test and I got 100% on it. And then I would move on to the next, and then the next, and then the next. And then after I did 5 chapters, I'd go back to the first. And I would just do a review of the first 5. Then I'd go into 6. Then I would go back and review the last 5. And then just keep on reviewing and reviewing and reviewing. Another thing I did is I did flashcards. These are my flashcards. I like my own flashcards rather than use someone else's flashcards, because what I'm doing is I'm writing down. So I'm not only reading and I say, well, I really have to memorize what the words say in this area, but I actually write down the thing. So the action of writing actually helps you to remember. And so these are some of my flashcards. And you can see them. They're all, and what I do with my flashcards is I put a little reference on the corner. Maybe you can do that. I put the page. I did the book I'm reading from, because now I'm reading from a bunch of books. So if I need to look it up again, I need the page in the book, and then I put the chapter down so I could keep them in order according to chapters. And as you can see, some of them look pretty beat up. They're different colors here from being handled so much. And so I would take something like this, and I'd take this to the dentist, take this to the bathroom. You're sitting there doing nothing, to study, And again, this sounds maybe tedious to some people because it just sounds tedious to them. But if you love the subject matter, and I love IT, and I love networks, and I love cybersecurity, I eat this stuff. It's so good, It's like, stop me on a airplane and start talking about cybersecurity, and you're going to hear an earful during the whole flight. And I get annoyed when people ignore cybersecurity when they're supposed to be cybersecurity experts or IT experts. It's always funny. Every time I talk to fellow IT guys that don't know cybersecurity, what's the first thing that came out of their mouth? Arrogance. They say, "Oh, no one would ever hack me." Yeah, everyone gets hacked. But there comes a place where you have to take some reasonable steps. Anyway, I'm off track. Anyway, see, I just have them all put together. Have broken, but I have all these things, and something, I review them every once in a while too. It's not that bad. So that's what I do. Now the next thing I do is, and I love these things, these yellow pads. And what I do on these yellow pads is I turn around and I write down what I've been studying, and I just rate it over and over and over again. So if I have to, do Kerberos, let's say, so I have so many things I have to do. Well, I read it, and then I write it out, and write it out, and write it out over and over and over again. That helps me memorize this. So if you're looking at trying to remember some of these things, to me that works. And let me tell you how I started. I know this is going to sound a little crazy to some people, but I get up about 4 o'clock in the morning every morning. It's just a habit. Been doing it most of my life, or a good portion of my life. And it's just a good time. It's quiet. For me, this works. Maybe you have a different time. But the first thing I do is I go through those cards, especially for the chapter I just finished. And I go through those cards, go over them. And then if I'm saying, I still don't have what that, what Kerberos is, let's say. So I'll go back and I'll write Kerberos, and I'll write down all the facts. And then, when I'm done, what I do, drive my wife crazy on this, I take a piece of paper and I throw it on the floor, because I'm doing this in the living room most of the times. So I throw that on the floor, and then when I'm done, I pick them all up. But at least 2 hours every day in cybersecurity or other portions of IT or business. And then for me, running a business, I want to see business news. So usually around 6:30, I stop and I watch basic news, and then I pay attention to business news, and then I'm getting ready to get to work, type of thing. But it works really well for me. and I enjoy it. It's not a chore, and when this stuff becomes a chore, I imagine it's insurmountable. And there's some things that are chores to me, but it's not IT or learning cybersecurity. Now, let's see. If you're thinking about doing the CISSP, again, I already told you about the requirements, a 6-hour exam. I'm just going to tell you how I took the exam. You go in and they fingerprint you. I think they palm printed me. I turned my pockets inside out. I couldn't have my cell phone. I could not have a watch. I could not have anything like that. No pens or anything else. And then what they do is they ask me to pull up the cuffs of my pants to see if I had any recording devices, which is fine. I don't have any problems with that. I just honestly want to pass the exam. I don't want to do anything unethical. And so I do all that, and you start the exam, and you have 6 hours straight from the time it starts to the time they say, get out of that seat, you're done. So I would work about an hour and a half, and then I'd take a break, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours into it, and I brought candy bars. So I'll go out to my car, grab a candy bar, a Hershey bar. There's some great sugar in there. It keeps you going, use the bathroom, get back as soon as possible to go through the whole routine again, and runs, empty pockets, everything else. They even looked at my glasses. They kept on looking at it, see if there was recording devices. And I don't mind that. The integrity of the certification is important to me also, because I'm putting the effort into it. I really would expect that I want to have integrity in this system. And so 6 hours, and at the end of the 6 hours, and by the way, take your picture and everything else, and you have to show 2 IDs. So by the end of the 6 hours, you go out and then they print a thing and it says congratulations, and it won't tell you, did you pass it by 1 question, or did you get it, all of them right? I don't think anybody's going to get all 250 questions right, but it doesn't matter. You passed. Now you're free to continue your study in this area and review, and which I do. I want to do the best I can to be a professional in this area, just because I believe that's what you should be. You should be a professional in the area. That's what, the valuable training I got in the Marine Corps, just the culture in the Marine Corps that says, that you need to work hard for success. Get up 4 o'clock in the morning and do your exercise and do the things you do. And just areas like that. Now, I don't exercise as much as I need to, because that's not a top priority of my life, but learning IT is. So what type of background should you have besides the 5 years of provable cybersecurity? I really think you need a really strong background in networks. A lot of things I learned in networks and studying Cisco and Cisco Security, CCNA, security in particular, really helped. I learned a lot about how people break into routers and switches and things like that. So when I'm studying CISSP, this all sounds familiar to me. I can see why you have to have a certain policy, and it really does start with policies and procedures, and then it goes, into the actual equipment, things like that. You don't want to go the other way. You don't want to just buy equipment and plug it in and say, "Oh, I'm safe." You want to start with a plan, do your policies and procedures, and then you do the network. But you should have a network background. You should be a network person. Some of the things I recommend, if you're absolutely new to the field, well, one of the things I would recommend that you do would be, start out with A+. I'm telling you, like maybe you're in high school and you want to be in IT, start out with A+. A certification, it's really a good certification. And then after that, do the other pluses. The Network Plus, that's another one that's really going to teach you a lot. And one of the things I love are networks, routers, switches, cabling, and I'm sure you saw what we do as far as cabling, and you really need to know basics of cabling also. But Network Plus will teach you all about that, and we'll teach you about, generally speaking, about routers and switches. And we'll talk to you about Cisco routers or Juniper routers and switches. It would just talk to you about network design and how to put it together and standards and procedures, and it's really good. So all the pluses in the CompTIA program, and you can look them up on the internet, CompTIA. And then the last one is Security Plus. That's an excellent thing, and I read through it a couple times. Didn't want to go for the certification, but read through it, thought it was pretty good. And so you get all this background, and you need that background, you need that experience, and of course, you know, if you're going to get this cert, it's not going to be something that's going to happen to you if you're 20 years old, because you need 5 years experience in cybersecurity. I have interns that work for me, and you know, they're in the college program or whatever, and they're learning about these things, and so they're getting experience as they're going through college. And there's a lot of things you can learn as an intern. Just remember that when you're young, you work for the experience. When you're older, you work for the money. But you know, understand that you're going to have to put out, if you're younger and if you want to be successful in IT, you're going to have to learn this. A lot of times what I learn is some people come with the idea that it's a business responsibility to help you with certs and to get you certified and to pay you to study. And you know something? It's not. You're going to have to put the effort out, the time, and everything else, and you're going to have to fall in love with the technology. And if you don't like this fact that you got to keep up in IT, you know, you always got to work on some sort of training and stuff like that. At least I believe you always have to, because your knowledge gets old after a while. I mean, no one's, I don't see any job openings for computer repair or DOS programming out there, so you always have to keep up with it. Now, if you don't like that, then go to another trade or do something else. You know, maybe you can become a plumber. Plumbers are valuable, by the way, and they make decent money. But I imagine, not being a plumber, even though I can do some plumbing, I imagine that once you learn the trade, you're pretty much set. You know, there's little changes here and there. That's not so in IT. Once you learn the trade, guess what? It's a treadmill. And you know what happens on a treadmill? You know, you're running along, all of a sudden you decide to stop. The treadmill pushes you right off onto your butt. And it's the same thing with IT. If you're not learning on a regular basis, doesn't mean every day. I like to do it 4 or 5 days a week. Doesn't mean every day. Doesn't mean every week. It doesn't mean every month. But if you're not making a consistent effort for yourself to learn these things, to learn IT, to learn about the different areas of IT, and there's a lot of areas in IT, then, you know, you're probably not an IT person if you don't love the technology. What I find out a lot of times is when I start studying a subject in IT, I might not be overly thrilled about that particular area of IT, but it's kind of interesting, so I start studying it. And then when I really get involved and I decide I'm going to spend that time actually going after that certification, I don't go after all certifications. Sometimes this is learning the subject matter is enough, because sometimes the certification maintenance can be a headache. You know, and it's just not as valuable to me as a business owner. So anyway, to make a long story short, I learned that I start to like this subject after a while. After I study for a while, it starts to get interesting. Well, that's about it for the CISSP. If you're deciding to take it, and you're going to spend that $500 or $600 for that test, whatever it is these days, you better, unless you have $500 or $600 to blow. That was a motivation for me to make sure I really learned the subject before I took the test. But I would recommend that you really learn the subject. You got to have that 5 years experience. So cybersecurity guys, generally speaking, are going to be a lot older than your normal IT guys. Most of them are. A lot of them are retired military. A lot of them have a lot of experience before they go for these certs. But if you're going to put in that effort, or that you're going to try to take that test to do these things, then put in the effort to learn it. And it is a worthwhile certification. And again, I believe it's the best certification. I believe it's the highest certification. I like the organization, the ISC2, called ISC Squared. ISC2.org is the website, but it's called ISC Squared. I'm just happy with it, and it was a good choice to me. And just to let you know how much it's a good choice, I'm working on my CCSP right now, and that's certified. Cloud Security Professional, and that's really good. I think cloud's the future, so that's probably going to be my next certification, and it's an easy book to read. Really appreciate you hanging in there with me. There's a lot that I covered today, and do your research on the internet to see if this is really what you should be doing. Ask around, find someone at the CISSP, ask them what they think. Find someone in cybersecurity and see what they think about different certifications or different training or things like that. And I am thankful that I didn't tie up 2 years of my life and $40,000 to $60,000 in that. I don't. That's not sour grapes either. I'll probably go do something else. I know there's a couple other colleges out there that are talking about other subjects. I need to learn more in some other areas. I was thinking about Homeland Security stuff. That sounds cool. Anyway, make a long story short, thank you for your time. Again, my name is Jim Gibson. I'm with No Voice and Data Systems, CableSupply.com, and Blackstone Cybersecurity. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, please. Subscribe. Always like subscribers. Always like to see those grow. And I am very thankful that people watch this. I'm sure if you have comments or you disagree, hey, write a comment on it. If it's foul language, I'm not going to print it. I'm not going to allow it out there. If it's stupid comments, I don't allow those either. So thank you for your time. You have a great day. Hi, this is Jim with CableSupply.com. Hi, this is Jim from CableSupply.com. Hi, this is Jim with CableSupply.com, and today I'm going to show you how to cut a hole in the drywall.
This is David signing out. You stay classy, Internet.